We interrupt with breaking news from WWL Louisiana.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Katie Moore. As many of you may have heard by now, the Saints have fired head coach Dennis Allen. That is why we are interrupting your regularly scheduled programming this afternoon. We're expecting the Saints to hold a news conference in just a few moments to address that firing and to introduce the new interim head coach, Darren Rizzi. And now the Saints have posted a statement of their own from Allen. He thanks Gayle Benson and Mickey Loomis for the opportunity to coach the team. He goes on to say, quote, "To the Saints fans and residents of New Orleans, I want to thank you for your unwavering passion and support of the team. I realize what a privilege it is to coach a special franchise in a great city, and I will fondly remember the opportunity I had to head coach the Saints." Now, of course, Dennis Allen has come in after Sean Payton. Sports director Doug Mouton joining me. You've covered this entire era of the Saints. So was this expected?
Yeah, look, once you lost to Carolina, it became much, much more expected. Taking this from the beginning, the Saints were on this losing streak. In the history of the organization, they've only had one losing streak longer than 7 games, and that was the baghead year of 1980, which unfortunately a lot of us remember. Now, we do want to say the Saints are doing a press conference right now. We are monitoring it. Foster Moreau is now stepping up to the podium. Let's go ahead and take Foster Moreau, New Orleans native, Jesuit High School, LSU. Here's Foster Moreau right now, live from the Saints facility in Metairie on the firing of Dennis Allen.
Right now, we're snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
Anything else?
Thank you. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
All right, that was Foster Moreau. He's one of the Saints stars. He was a Jesuit star before that, an LSU star. Obviously put in a difficult spot today as head coach Dennis Allen has been fired, and now, of course, the special teams coordinator stepping in an interim basis.
Yeah, look, and let me say a couple of things about Foster Moreau. As Tyrann Mathieu walks to the podium, they brought up Foster Moreau and Tyrann Mathieu for a reason. They're New Orleans natives. They can speak to this. We apologize for the language.
Yes.
Obviously, it's a highly emotional time, but let's hear from Tyrann Mathieu, another New Orleans native, St. Augustine, LSU. Here's Tyrann Mathieu.
First team I ever been on that, really basically, got a coach fired. So I think he'll do a great job. Appreciate it.
All right, Tyrann Mathieu there leaving the podium as we await the interim head coach who is about to take the podium today.
Yeah, Darren Rizzi will be coming up in a minute, and we're going to talk at length about Dennis Allen, but I do want to tell you a little bit about Darren Rizzi. 54 years old. He's from New Jersey, and he wears that on his sleeve. He worked his way up at small colleges in the Northeast, worked his way up with the Dolphins, came to the Saints in 19, and here's the Saints interim coach, Darren Rizzi.
Tough day for me, tough day for this profession. It's kind of just, so I've heard from a lot of those guys today, which is pretty cool.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right, that is Darren Rizzi, the interim head coach for the Saints. He seems like quite a character. I think it's going to be a lot of fun moving forward with him, but tough day.
Yeah, very tough day. But look, let me catch up a few things from Darren Rizzi and the things we've heard. We don't know yet. I'm waiting for clarification whether or not we're going to hear from Mickey Loomis. If you see me looking over this way, it's because that's where I can see the podium shot to see what's going on at the Saints offices. Again, Rizzi, 54 years old, from New Jersey, as he says multiple times, worked his way up in small colleges in the Northeast, got his first job as an under assistant with the Miami Dolphins, worked his way up, got his first job with Sean Payton and the Saints in 2019, interviewed for the job when Dennis Allen got it. He's a guy who wants to be a head coach. You heard him ask about whether you start playing rookie quarterbacks and sort of punting for the future. Yeah. If you know Darren Rizzi, there is 0 chance in 100 that that's going to happen. Darren Rizzi is playing to win and absolutely will play to win. So you heard him, as the press conference was going on, get more decisive about Derek Carr playing quarterback, because Derek Carr will play quarterback. He's going to play to win, and that's why you hire Darren Rizzi. He has been a terrific special teams coach. The fake punt that the Saints ran this week was the most creative call that the Saints ran. It worked. They faked Taysom Hill running and then ran Matthew Hayball, the punter, around the end while everyone was focusing on Taysom Hill. It was a beautifully designed play. It was the most creative play the Saints ran. Darren Rizzi's going to coach the Saints to win. He said said he's not phony. I can 100% back that up. He said he will not be boring. I can 100% back that up. He called himself a fighter. I can 100% back that up. Those are all things that will define Darren Rizzi. You heard people talk about Joe Woods. Joe Woods was Dennis Allen's defensive coordinator, but Dennis Allen ran the defense in the same way that Sean Payton ran the offense as a head coach. So now Joe Woods will step up into a larger role with the defense. He ran the red zone defense. Now he will run the entire defense and make the defensive calls. That's the short term. Let me say one more thing. The reason this is surprising long term, Katie, is because Tom Benson bought this team in 1985. Since Tom Benson bought this team, the Saints have never fired a coach mid-season. They've had two coaches resign mid-season. That was Bum Phillips in '85 and then Jim Mora in 1996. In other cases, they have waited till the end of the season to fire head coaches. They waited till the end of the season to fire Mike Ditka. They waited till the end of the season. That was in 1999. They waited till the end of the season to fire Jim Haslett in 2005 after the Katrina season. Dennis Allen has been with this organization for a long time. He was a huge piece of the Saints Super Bowl winning team in '09. He was the Saints secondary coach. Then he became the defensive coordinator. Then he got other jobs at other teams, became the head coach of the Oakland Raiders, came back to the Saints when the Raiders head coaching job didn't work out. So that's why it's surprising, because we know the fondness this organization has for Dennis Allen, and we know their track record of not firing head coaches midseason. Since Tom Benson bought the team in 1985, that's 40 years ago, they have not done this until today, but that'll tell you where this situation had gone.
Yeah, and you mentioned yourself that it's been since the 80s that we've had a seven-game losing streak. So that's an indicator that some serious change needed to happen, and they started at the top today.
Yeah, they had 5 7-game losing streaks in history. The only losing streak longer than this one was 1980. So Darren Rizzi will be trying to break that, trying to break out of that. And look, if you watch the Saints team on Sunday, to me, I stayed up all night last night writing my 4 takeaways for today, which now I will not do. And my number 1 takeaway was, it's time. It's time for a change. And the reason I thought that, in that fourth quarter, in the last 9 minutes of the game, when the Saints had a chance to beat a bad team, they had 60 yards of penalties in the last 9 minutes of the game, which is a crazy amount in the last 9 minutes of a game. That shows a team that is not playing loose. That shows a tight team. And look, that's on coaching. It just is. And you cannot make those kind of penalties, those kind of mistakes. The Saints completely dominated statistically in this game and lost. They completely dominated statistically against the Atlanta Falcons, which was the second game of this losing streak, and lost. They should have beaten the Philadelphia Eagles and lost. That's 3 games that they lost in this losing streak in the final couple of minutes of this game, and that's on coaching. And it was not getting better. And look, here's the big picture thing, Katie, too. Darren Rizzi said there's a lot of developing players on this team, sure. But this is also an aging roster. This is one of my other takeaways I was going to do. The Saints have 9 players on this roster over 30 years old in key positions. 9 players over 30. If you take the 14 NFL teams that are in playoff spots right now, none of them have more than 9 players over 30. The Washington Commanders have exactly 9. The 13 other teams that are in playoff positions are all fundamentally younger than the Saints. So you have an aging roster that was making mistakes in the fourth quarter. When Dennis Allen was hired, it was said this was to continue Sean Payton's legacy. It's obvious that Sean Payton's legacy, which began in 2006, is now officially over with the firing of Dennis Allen. Because Dennis Allen was a big piece of that. And my belief is, this is what I would have said in the 4 takeaways tonight, it is time to not only move on in coaching, but it's time to blow the whole thing up and reboot and start over. And I mean across the board in the organization. This was an organizational failure. The Saints weren't deep enough this season. When they had a couple of injuries, they could not overcome them on offense. You're seeing it across the board. And look, it's okay to blow up up this is what happens in pro sports. You build a winner, you ride that pony as long as you can, and then when it's over, you blow it up and start over.
Well, something that's interesting on that note is that we have not really heard from Mickey Loomis. We haven't heard from Gayle Benson. All of the people who spoke at this news conference this afternoon all said they wanted to keep the conversations about how this unfolded today private between them and, the Saints leadership. So it'll be interesting to hear what Mickey Loomis has to say when he finally speaks, when Gayle Benson finally talks, and what the decision making was leading into this and doing it mid-season.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And not just what the decision making was this time, because I think why they. I mean, obviously you're 2-7, and it's a plane in a tailspin that you don't see how you're going to pull it back up. I get that, but really, I think the big questions going forward are what this means going forward, what this means in how you blow things up and how much you start things over. Look, here's the other thing that I wanted to say when you talk about this era being over, right?
Yeah.
Sean Payton got here in 2006. Since 2006, and it's been bad the last couple, terrible this year, not great the last few years. Of all the teams in the NFL, 32 NFL teams since 2006, of those 32 teams, you know what the Saints rank since 2006 in winning percentage?
No.
They're 5th best. Out of 32 since 2006. We have seen a 19-year run that for lifelong New Orleanians,
that's amazing,
who grew up watching horrible football our whole lives, it has been a spectacular 19-year run. I mean, it has, and there's no other way to slice that. I know it's only one Super Bowl, but it's one Super Bowl that me or my dad ever thought we'd see in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
The Saints won a Super Bowl. They had a 19-year spectacular run, but I think as of 9:15 this morning or whatever it was, I think the run is now officially over.
Well, we heard it from Tyrann Mathieu too. We know that Gayle Benson and Mickey Loomis understand what this team means to this community. And so to be able to have that 19-year run has been spectacular, but obviously they want it to continue. They want to give the city that.
And look, I'll say the Saints chose wisely in bringing out Foster Moreau and Tyrann Mathieu. These are New Orleanians who look, I have guys that after a game, and especially after a loss, you call them your go-to guys. Like, who's going to talk to you, not be angry, and understand it's part of their job to explain things in a way that makes sense, because you have to answer to people. Tyrann Mathieu and Foster Moreau and Alvin Kamara, those are the go-to guys in the locker room. You hear Tyrann Mathieu taking personal responsibility, and you understand why he's had the level of success that he's had for a guy who admittedly is not a great athlete. And Tyrann Mathieu's been spectacular, but the new era of the Saints ends today and maybe begins tomorrow, but we'll see how this plays out.
Well, let's hope that future is bright. We're going to continue to cover this big story for you today on the WWL Louisiana News at 5, and of course on all those social media platforms.